Who has not read Fables? Raise your hand. Identify yourself. All right.
And everybody here knows.
Stand up and move to the aisle.
Everybody knows who the adversary. The adversary people knows.
Okay, you guys that haven't read Fables yet, just stick your fingers in your ears and go.
So,
what if we read the
yesterday, I heard it for the first time.
Yeah, well, I suspected that you were conferring with each other in a language I did not know.
You said you do this in Hebrew.
Yeah, well.
Anyway, so the adversary originally was planned to be, that's what you said, that you wanted to be Peter Pan.
Peter Pan.
Now, today, when we know who's the adversary, and you said it yourself, it made sense, puppet monster and everything. What exactly did you have in mind when you thought about Peter Pan as the adversary?
Well, the reason, here in Fables, for those of you that aren't reading it, I was taking some old characters that you know well and switching them around, like the big bad wolf, who, one of the big villains in Fables was now one of the heroes, etc. So I thought if some of the villains can become heroes, some of the characters that we think of in their stories as heroes can become the villains. And I thought, whoever the bad guy is, it should be a well-known character. And my favorite well-known character that everyone, whoever read the story, thinks is a hero, but I've always, since childhood, thought was a villain, was Peter Pan. Because, I mean, even when my parents read this to me as a kid, even the Disney version, which is so cutie, sparkly, the premise is there's this guy in this fantasy magical land who comes to our world and steals our children. And takes them away where they're going to live forever, and these poor parents are never going to find out what happened to their children. And he's the good guy. And as a kid, I didn't want, by the way, and I slept downstairs. My brother and I had to share a room, as I may have mentioned, we're a big family. And it was kind of a ranch style, I don't know what they call it, like split level duplexes, like 2 levels on top of each other, and then half a level this way. But anyway, my bedroom was downstairs, but sort of a basement thing. It was sunken in the earth so that our window, which is about this high up, was outside the ground about this high up. So any kind of monster thing would have come along and come to that window and gotten me. And so I had a lot of considerable nightmares at that time about Peter Pan or some other thing coming through that window and taking me away. And the flying thing, yeah, okay, the flying thing could have been cool and all this kind of stuff. But then you're going to live out in the middle of the woods with, pirates and Indians and stuff like that, and no parents ever, no free comics on Get Sick Day. So I've always thought that Peter Pan was a more sinister character. And in the book, if you read it, there is a sinister undertone.
It's also his own version, James Barry, of Peter Pan is, he has a play called Mary Rose, which is the evil side.
Oh, really? Well, see? But anyway, Peter Pan was the obvious villain, the adversary. And, he takes children away from their homes and takes them to Neverland. And in some way, that's how he gets his dark power over these innocent souls. And if he was the villain, then of course, Captain Hook, who's portrayed as the villain, but that's Peter Pan's publicity machine, he was obviously the good guy. And so him and his crew of so-called pirates on their magical ship, basically they were a child rescue operation. They were going to be trying to free these children and bring them back. And by the way, the original visual design for Captain Hook ended up being Bluebeard, which is why in the very first appearance of Bluebeard, I think in the second issue of Fables, you see amongst the stuff in his office, he's now Bluebeard. He never was Captain Hook, so to speak. But he has the hook in the display case on the desk, so it's just a little link to those of us that knew what was originally going to happen. But yeah, Peter Pan was going to be the villain, except for the deal was that all these characters had to be public domain characters. And I meticulously checked to make sure every character I was using was in the public domain. And he was. Peter Pan is and was in the public domain in the United States. But of course, I did not check international laws. And Britain had a special dispensation for Peter Pan. Their public domain laws pretty much mirrored ours, except by a specific act of Parliament. Peter Pan was selected out as the one exception to that because all of the royalties for Peter Pan and Peter Pan related material went to the Ormond Sacker Hospital for young kids, well, kids. And the hospital did not want to suddenly find itself bereft of most of their income. And so by act of Parliament, they extended the copyright for them for that special purpose. So because of those goddamn little sick kids, I had to find and we sold books in the United Kingdom, so I had to find a substitute for the adversary, and I think we found a very good substitute, one that in hindsight I'm glad we had, because even though Peter Pan would have been a kind of interesting villain like once or twice, the long-term effects of a ages-old puppet master, I think offered many, many more possibilities than Peter Pan.
So I got 3 more hours worth of questions, but I think they'll open to them.
Okay.
And since we don't have any landmines here, you can think of everything.
But hey, you're the moderator. It's your job. I can't handle the responsibility.
A lot of writers talk about how you have to like your characters or empathize with your characters, and you write quite a lot of people who are frankly assholes. Yeah. So, what's your take on what's your take on that?
I think you have to understand your character. So I guess that's officially the definition of empathy. But I do not subscribe to that idea that with perfect empathy comes perfect forgiveness. My personal philosophy is not forgive and forget. It's occasionally forgive and never forget. But anyway, that's beside the point.
Forgive, forget it.
Pardon me?
Forgive, forget it.
Forgive and forget it? That's very good. So I guess you have to try and understand every character. But I don't think that takes a tremendous act of imagination, because there's a few universal aspects about the most twisted sicko still thinks he's the hero of his own story. He still justifies his action in some way. So to create a villain like the adversary, for example, I was clear to try and make it so that when he explains why he is, how he is, that every step in his worldview was the responsible, correct, and sometimes even moral step to take until such time as you take too many steps down a dark path and you're on your way. There's so many characters. I mean, they accuse me of you must be a warmonger because Bigby Wolf is, or you must be a ridiculous communist liberal because Goldilocks is. You can't really be all things there. Maybe I just sort of understand those characters. I don't know.
Do you have any more crossovers planned?
That's a good question. This is going to be real kind of geeky fanboy stuff. If DC would ever come to me and say, let's do that Bigby Wolf Batman crossover, I would do it in a second. And I even have a way that Bigby Wolf could, obviously the way the Bigby world works with the gates and the different worlds and stuff, he could easily end up in Batman's world and be gone by the end of it, so that it doesn't really disrupt the DCU. If that happened, I do not have a plan because I don't think they would ever allow such a thing. But it would really kind of be cool. if outside the DC company, if Mike Mignola ever said, let's do a Hellboy Fables crossover thing, not only would I do that in a moment, but I would, well, I would actually say I'd barter my soul to that left, so I would barter my best friend's soul to him to do something like that. So there's a few things that would be my personal kryptonite that I would have to do. That said, no planned crossovers in the near future. We have Fables planned out pretty far in advance, real far in advance actually, and nothing coming up. Now, understanding that some Fables characters, you know, the Jack characters, whatever, exist in the same fictional universe. So if they do the occasional cameo, I don't consider that a crossover. I just consider that they're appearing in one of the other books.
On the internet, they said there's going to be a Fable series, TV series, on the ABC network.
Yeah.
We should dig that up.
Here's what I know. He asked on the internet, of course, there was the announcement that there is a Fables TV series in the work with ABC. Here's what I know about that. First of all, let's establish ground rules. One of the reasons DC accepted Fables so quickly as a comic book is that Jeanette Kahn, a wonderful, wonderful woman, was still running DC at the time. She had already announced her retirement and was sort of half out the door and had already made secret plans that no one knew at the time to, once she left DC Comics, start a movie production company in California called Double Nickel. Double Nickel Productions, you may or may not know, produced the absolutely wonderful movie Gran Torino. So she runs a pretty good production operation. One of the reasons that Fables was accepted so quickly is that right away she saw the proposal and said, I can get a movie out of this. And said, we're buying this. And I found out after the fact that when some of the DC Vertigo editors said, let's start this off with a miniseries, and I said, no, it's ongoing series of nothing. It was Jeanette Kahn that said, give him what he wants, we're buying this. So good for her. So as long as Fables has been produced, comic-wise, there's been movement on getting it done as a movie or TV series, whatever. And as a matter of fact, at first, Jeanette Kahn had gone out the door of DC Comics and started Double Nickel with an arrangement with Warner Brothers because she had an ongoing relationship after the fact with them, and even maintains offices there, that they would get to do Fables as a movie. Warner Pictures would be, you know, writing the checks, but Double Nickel, in cooperation with Jim Henson Pictures, would do the movie. And I like this idea because Jeanette Kahn loved the series, and almost as soon as Fables started coming out, it kind of created a buzz in Hollywood, and I was getting all sorts of calls from different producers saying, we want the rights, we want the rights. And some of them were, we love Fables. You know, I pick up the phone, I was living in Vermont at the time, and I pick up the phone, and before any introduction, we love Fables, we want to make a movie of Fables, we're going to make $1 million, and we love the story. I go, so who's your favorite character? Well, I haven't read it, but the person that I hired to read things for me, who hired someone to read things for her, said, it's great, we want to do it, etc. Had a lot of calls like that. As a matter of fact, there's one funny call, because I can't remember the producer, but some big producer on the Bruckheimer level, Don Murphy.
Don Murphy.
Yeah. But he started the conversation without introducing himself. He just picked up the phone and he said, all right, tell me how a Fables movie, that I would come out of a Fables movie feeling exactly the way I felt when I came out of Toy Story. That's the way I kind of thought it over and said, well, I don't know how you felt. He said, were you mad at your wife? gardener screwing up the ficus again? And then he kind of like, don't you know who I am? And I go, well, no, maybe an introduction. I love this story so much and I would embarrass him by naming him if I could remember. But he said, you're being very rude. And I said, yes, I'm being very rude because I don't know how you felt coming out of Jerusalem. But I really know who you are, and that ended the conversation. And there were a few fun things, like Maverick Pictures called them, and it said, we want the rights to Fables, we want to do Fables, we're Madonna's production company, Madonna loves Fables. I go, oh, Madonna read Fables? Sure. The reason I told her that is that when Lisa Henson got on the phone, for one thing, she introduced herself, and so right away she gets manners points out the wazoo. Which apparently is where manners points come from, by the way. They come out of a wazoo. A dry ghost wazoo, which actually had running. I got you on that one, huh? Remember that dry ghost wazoo really works for certain segments of certain audiences. Good band name, dry ghost wazoo. So she got points for introducing herself, and I knew who Lisa Henson was, and she was the bigwig that ran Jim Henson Pictures, and she got on the phone with me, and we talked for hours, no exaggeration, about Fables. And here's the things I loved about this issue. She just went through everything. She read every single issue, and the ones that hadn't come out yet, because Jeanette Kahn was slipping them to her in the advanced script. So we were gonna, make a movie, and I was happy with them. I was behind having a movie done with people that obviously love the material, and they asked me, would you be willing to come to LA and help us make this movie? And I said, why no? I wouldn't live in LA. I will help you make the movie, and I will move as close as I can bring myself to live to LA, which is right at the border of California in Las Vegas. But that's a short drive, and yes, we're going to do this. And I had this wonderful experience in Hollywood for a little while, driving from Las Vegas to LA to Jim Henson Pictures, where I was one of those guys that just pull up at the gate, which by the way has a giant frog on it, and give my name and get to go in and park next to the Mercedes and the Lexuses and things like that. Kind of a Hollywood bigwig kind of moment. And by the way, this is the same production studio that Charlie Chaplin used to have, so it has, yes, it's a history. It's pretty cool. I would be assigned my parking space, and we'd go in and we were interviewing, writers for it, and she asked, like, who do you see in certain parts? And I mentioned that, Snow White was created with Jennifer Connelly in mind, and she says, we can get Jennifer Connelly. So it was kind of cool. I was a little disappointed because my Hollywood experiences and some of those phone calls led me to believe that, the cliche of Hollywood is they're gruff, evil bastards. At some point, someone will say, you'll never work in this town again. And instead, they were very polite, and they were nice to me and deferential, and if I wanted something, they got it. And I didn't even get stuck in traffic, not once. So it kind of, burst all my bubble. And plus, they arranged for me to have private VIP tours of Warner Brothers Pictures. Not the ones that everyone gets, but like an executive that drives me around on my own golf cart, and she keeps asking me, like, so what are you doing with Warner Pictures? I'm one of the people that when, people probably, like I just drove Russell Crowe around. I was the Russell Crowe. Well, I thought I detected Russell Crowe imprint on the
You can do big
that type of thing. And I got some behind the scenes tour. That was really cool. I got to sit in the Chandler Bing chair on the Friends set and do the quick draw of the marker. And they were just making the movie Constantine at the time. And I don't know if you saw that. There's this one scene that takes place in hell that looks like a big jam, broken cars and things like that. And it was on the biggest soundstage they have, and it sure was. It looked like just a big junkyard of broken cars, and they had to put all the special effects in. And I was wandering around in there, and I wasn't supposed to, by the way, and they finally saw me just as I was about to ride on one of the cars filled with steers. But that was kind of cool. So they treated me very well. And then I found out this is the way that Hollywood works, because Warner TV, a sister company of Warner Features, had been trying to get this one hot young Turk writer to come and write a series for them. And the hot young Turk writer said, I will do a series for you, or I'll come write for you, if you can get me Fables. And they said, sure, we can get you Fables. And they snatched Fables away from Lisa Henson and Jeanette Kahn and said, we're giving it to Warner TV. And so that's how they ended up not getting to do the movie. But because of all those negotiations, DC wanted to make sure that they could negotiate a deal without my interference, because we don't like working with, weird pie-in-the-sky artist types that, actually have interests rather than money in mind. Like this. So they bought the rights to handle things totally by themselves from me for a very generous amount. And they shopped it around. To finally answer your question, it landed in various studios many, many times, for many years. I told the story about, and I believe it was at NBC for a while, and a fellow at NBC was going to do it, and then the DC TV movie guy kept calling me and saying, it's a done deal, this guy loves Fables, he knows it, it's in production, and he's our angel. You need angels, like shepherding things through studios. They take them under their wing to make sure they're going to happen. He's our angel there, and he's going to make it happen, and we're smooth sailing. This was about 4 years ago, and just about the time this was going to go into full production, this guy is lured away from NBC by, I believe, Sony. It may have been some other big studio, bigger salary, bigger position. And so, of course, the next guy that comes up into his old position takes a look at all the projects that this first guy had going and says, kill them all. And the reason being that it's a no-win solution for him. Either they're going to suck and bomb, which means I'm not doing a good job because I put something in production that's going to suck and bomb, or they're going to be wonderful and genius and take off, in which case I don't get the credit, it's that other guy, because those were all his projects. So we killed them all. And that's why we start again at some other studio and start working our way up. And that's the way Hollywood works, and that's why I believe that no movie or no TV show has ever actually been made. It's all just a collective figment of our imagination. No, I haven't answered this question yet. And besides, you're still laughing at the wazoo something or other thing. I know. Anyway, DC had, this is what I know. A little while ago, almost a year ago, I got the call that said DC had made a deal, meaning things were signed on paper with ABC Studios to do the series. A deal to do the series means a lot of things, but what it doesn't mean is that they'll do the series. What it means is they're going to try and do the series. There are stages. First, they have to make a pilot. A pilot is the first episode of the series. You know this, right? Yeah. Before they make the pilot, they have to write the pilot. When they write the pilot, they look it over, decide for changes, etc. They get notes, they rewrite it, and finally it's fine, and then they film the pilot, and then they take that pilot that they filmed and show it to test audiences, and if the test audiences love it, then maybe they'll consider doing the series. But if the test audience hate it and all that kind of stuff, then they say, put it on the shelf, we're not going to do the series. So that's what that deal means. Right now, the pilot script has been written. Apparently, DC wasn't, or not DC, but ABC, DC, the whole conglomerate of people were not totally satisfied with the pilot script, so they asked for revisions. those revisions did not take place in time. There's only a limited time every year that pilots are made. It's the pilot season. So they missed this window of opportunity, and it's going to be a year before the next window of opportunity comes up. That's where I think it is. I can't swear to that because this is one of those situations where everyone in the business thinks that someone else is keeping me informed. So I'm often, and usually, the last person to know. That said, to answer your question, I have no idea. They're casting.
We'll do that next time Bill comes, so because you promised, no, we have to close down.
Or do we have to get out of here?
All right. Is there anybody there? So first of all, Bill promised that he will come again. So. Part 2, Revenge of the ווילינגהאם, and thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. I'm sorry my answers were so long because we could have gotten to many, many more questions.
Yeah, it's okay. Just spend tons of time writing them.
Plus, we'll do some general stuff tomorrow at the Q&A after the reading as well, I guess.
Okay. All right. After the reading, I promise we'll leave a little time for Q&A, and I promise I will give short, terse answers to questions.
Maybe will be very nice.
No, and then they say, you've got great answers, and you got